Can you hear me? Oh, you see. See, the lack of power, you know what it does? It doesn't. You can't do anything without power. So we've started studying the book, The Path of the Just, of Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. And I explained this morning that the book is not even somewhere in my level. It's not even close to my level. It is far above, really far above. Because what he describes in what is really compassion and devotion to a life to God, I'm not even close to that. I'm not even close to that. And I'm just going to take a small portion of devotion today. That he speaks about devotion. His chapter talks about piety, or I don't know how do you pronounce it. Is it piety or piety? Piety. Okay, you see a burki, you know, piety. Okay. When we talk about piety, it's about something you eat. So piety is a dutiful devotion to God and observance of religious principles. So it's a duty that you've got on yourself to serve God. But if you go onto the internet and you look at the synonyms for piety, it's devotion, it's religion, it's holiness, it's godliness, it's sanctity, sanctitude, saintliness. It's got so many various descriptions, your devotion. I like to translate it more to devotion. Because today it's about devotion. It's about God wants us to devote this day, our lives, everything we have done up to this far, in this one day. And that's why I wanted to speak a little bit about this devotion. But before we do that, I want to read something. Deuteronomy 6. Verse 1, it says, "And this is the command, the laws, and the right rulings which Yahweh your Elohim has commanded to teach you, to do in the land which you are passing over to possess, so that you fear Adonai your Elohim, to guard all his ways, his commands, which I command you, and your son." So he says, to fear Adonai your Elohim, and to guard all his ways and his commands which I command you, and your son and your grandson all the days of your life, and that your days be prolonged, and that you shall hear, O Israel, that you shall hear, O Israel, and shall guard to do, that it might be well with you, and that you increase greatly, as Adonai Elohim of your fathers has spoken to you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And you shall love Adonai your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, with all your might. So the last verse says, and you shall love Adonai your Elohim with what? How shall you love him? Firstly, with all your heart and with all your being. But isn't the heart part of your being? So he's taken the heart out of the being, he's put it separately, and he said, with your heart, and then with all of your being, and with all of your might, with all of your strength. So how shall we serve God? I am not serving God in this way yet. If I really have to sit today and I have to think how God is demanding us, and it starts, and this is the command that I'm giving you today, that you shall not have a half-hearted devotion. It must be a total devotion to him with your whole heart, with your whole being, and with all your might. Now that includes everything that's around your whole being. So the next slide, we have spoken previously in a few teachings ago about the wrestle to perfection. And I want to say that this wrestle is not a wrestle, it's actually a war. It's a war that we have to fight with ourselves every day, with the evil inclination every day, so that we can grow to perfection Because there's only one way. There is no middle way. There's no middle way. There's either the Creator or there's the evil one. And there's only the knowledge of the Creator that will bring us closer to Him, or the closer we get to evil, the less imperfect we will become. And the more imperfect we become, the wider and the further we grow from our Creator. But He says, I've given you everything that you need to teach you. So whatever I've given you, even today, this Yom Kippur day, that we have to remind ourselves, that we have to afflict ourselves, it is to teach us. He says that you should do. So everything that I've given you is to do. So we study the Word and we do so many things, but how many of these things have we implemented over this year? He says that you should fear. Now, the last chapters of Ramchal's book, he talks about the fear of sin. There's basically two fears. One is the fear of God, but the other one is also the fear of sin. I fear God, and therefore I fear to sin before my Creator. And to God, to do. It says to teach, to do, to fear, and to guard yourself. So if you have attained a certain level in your life, a certain spiritual level, certain knowledge, it is your duty to guard yourself so that it doesn't get lost, doesn't get stolen. Because that is to love God. Now, if we take any, and Deuteronomy could have put it in any order for us, but he has specifically written it in such an order. You cannot do it vice versa. You cannot do without knowing. You have to know why you are doing it, how to do it. You need to know the purpose of doing it. And the biggest purpose is to fear God. We said this morning, why do we not eat any pork? You have an answer for that. Well, if there's any other answer except because God said so, then you are doing it for the wrong reason. We can say, oh, it's an unclean animal. I don't care if it's a clean or unclean animal. It's about God said do not do it. And therefore we shall not do it. And therefore He teaches us to do so that we fear Him. That we will guard ourselves, that we would enter into a place, that we would, is there any pork in this? So that you vigilantly seek any leaven in your bread. Because even in the New Testament scripture, John says, if you love me, you keep my commandments. Not teach my commandments, not remember my commandments, you keep it. Now keep is twofold. It is to do and to guard. That is keep. Is to do and to guard. Now this wrestle of perfection is in three levels. It's the body, the soul, and the spirit. Sometimes what the soul wants and what the body wants are two different things, and what the spirit wants is even completely different. So there's this constant wrestle within us to strive for certain things. The body does not want to pray early in the morning. The body does not want to fast. The spirit wants, you must pray, you must fast. So we've got this constant wrestle in us. And therefore Ramchal comes in, is when it comes to devotion or the divisions of piety, he can break down devotion into three areas. And the one area is the deed. It's the thing that we do. The one is the manner of performance. So we're doing it, but how are we doing it? And then the third division is the intent. Why are we doing it? So as much as there is devotion, we have to understand devotion comes in three levels. We can physically do the deed without a pure intent, or with no pure intent. What is the worth of that deed? Or we could do the deed, but the manner of performing the deed, if somebody looks at it, people they come and paint the wall, And they said, "No, but we've painted the wall." And you said, "Come on, grade 1 can paint this wall better." So the manner of the performance also describes the deed and also the intent of your deed. Well, you can have all the intent and do nothing, or the performance is not even there. What is the worth of your intent? Nothing. So we understand that devotion needs to be on all three levels. And it needs to be equally yoked on three levels. The deed, the manner of the performance, and the intent. To keep Shabbat is the deed. But how do you keep Shabbat? But you can say to me, I keep the Shabbat and I keep it. But what is the intent of keeping a Shabbat? Because my neighbors, they also keep Shabbat. And if I don't keep the Shabbat, they're going to think, what type of person this is? What is the people going to say about me not keeping Shabbat? So what is the intent of keeping a Shabbat? Is it really to get closer to God? Is it really to study? So we understand that these three deeds, this manner of performance of this, or this breakdown of devotion. And reading this book, and I'm saying to God, I'm not even close to where Ramchal is explaining a lot of these things. How you God, how you seek through everything to seek the intent. You're constantly on an awareness level. I say, God, I don't know if I'm ever going to make it, because it's on a very high level. And I'm reading a book, and sometimes I'm saying, I'm not even seeing myself in the book. And I'm trying to explain to myself, but why is it this way? And there's only one way that I can explain it to you today, why certain people do certain things, and why certain things is not always attainable by other people or being done by other way. And the only way that I can explain it is by using my experience in the army. Now, when you knew in South Africa there was a law, if you turned 18, you have to do a compulsory 2 years national service. You can still remember that. So you had no choice. If you refused, they would put you in jail. That was it. So you could then, you had to go, so you go onto your 2 years national service, and you get guys, they liked it, and some other guys, they did not like it. So their manner of performance was, I'm going to use military terminology because I don't have any other terminologies, but they would call a guy like that quite nafi. He's nafi. He was slap. He didn't do it. But the fact that he did go didn't put him into jail. So if we just took that guy, he was in a 2 years National Defense Force. Was he good or wasn't he good? Well, he was good in one sense because he did go. Some other guys, they fled the country. They did not go. So was he better than those guys? Yes, he was. But now that he's in the Defense Force, and he gets measured by the community around him, he gets measured by the persons around him, suddenly his performance are not so good. It's really bad. But if I have to take a national defense, a 2 years compulsory person, versus a person that decided to go voluntarily, permanent. So there was no time limit on how long he will serve in the Defense Force or in the Air Force. Or no. I spent most of my life in the Air Force. The Mirage F1, I spent a lot of time working on the Mirage. But I also had a lot of time doing some military training and the bush phase. So there are two different types of mindsets. The one that is, he's there because he needs to be there. I'm serving God because, if I don't serve God, I'm going to go to hell. I serve God, but I serve God with a really nafi attitude. I can't use just slap because slap is an Afrikaans word, but it's the best description there. I don't know what other. So it's a real nafi. He's really, his heart is not into it. But he can't be put into jail because he's there. But what I found during that time, a person like that, during that time of his national service, had a really hard time. He could not enjoy every moment of it. It was hell for 2 years. Literally, it was hell for 2 years. There was one person just below God himself, and that was the corporal. Whatever he said, it was the truth. And what he said you had to do, you did it. So there was this period, and I'm thinking to myself that when I entered into the permanent force, when you're in National Defense Force, you start, the day that you enter that camp, you have an almanac and you start counting down the days. You go like, wow, so many days. And your time spent doing that service is by counting down the days until you will be released. So your whole intent, your whole attitude, your whole way of serving was just to abide the time and to get out of there. Now we have many believers today that, God, I wish everything would just go away. So they wish this time would just go past. You know, so that everything will come. The kingdom will be, because the intent is for them not to be here. They don't really want to be here. Their whole heart is not in this life. But God created this life. God created every single commandment to be kept here in this life. And therefore he says to us, I want you with your whole heart, with your whole being and all your might, to invest yourself in this time period. I know when I give you everything that you need in the time to come, it will be easier for you to do it. But I want you to do it in a time when it's not so easy. I want your devotion completely to me. And you would find people during that time, during the Defense Force, that they would really shine. But you take that same person and you put him into a permanent position, then you will even see that him and his high position there is lower than a permanent force. And I'll give you an example. When you are in a time period, the 2 years time period, you do all the things because you know that, you know, the weekend pass is coming. There is going to breaks. You are just waiting for the highlights in your life all the time to make this 2 years bearable. And you shine your shoes and your trousers are ironed, so your outwardly appearance is impeccable according to you. But when you put a person like that against a person that voluntarily, before he was even called up, he said, you know, I would love to be in the Air Force. I would love to be in the Army. I would love to do this. I would love to do that. The day that he enters through that gate, what do you think his intent is? And how would his manner of performance be? Just the fact that he wants to be there. It's completely different. The shoes are shining. Why? Because he's got a pride in why he is there. The intent and the manner of performance are always at a very, very high level. Now, not all permanent force members went there in order to, because they love to be in the Air Force. Some of them went there so that they can have an easier life than 2 years. You know, I'll have rather an easy 4 years life than a tough 2 years life. So I'll go permanent force. That's also the intent, but you will immediately see the manner of performance of that person in that time period. It is, so everything is about the intent. Am I there because I'm forced to be there. I'm serving God because, you know what, this whole concept of hell doesn't gel with me. And this whole burning thing, I don't think I can take it. So I'll serve God because I just don't want to go to hell. So the intent is from the start not completely devoted. And you can see the manner of performance is also not so good. While you have a person in the permanent, well, I'll classify myself under that, they say crazy. Because during that time, who wants to go permanent force? But I loved aircraft. Every moment I could spend in a stinking jet fuel environment, I was happy. As soon as I could get my hands dirty, changing tires and brakes and the missiles and doing everything on the aircraft, I was a happy person. To get dirty, I was very happy. I was happy to be fit. I was happy to be under a structure that I knew that was unshakable. I loved having clean shoes. I loved, even up to today, my trousers. They needed to be ironed a certain way. I loved it. It's just who I am. I loved it. And therefore, the manner of performance of many, many things created very high expectations among peers of mine. So I reached the rank of a sergeant within the Air Force, and which you would think, wow, it's high, but it is not, because it's all according to where you could have been. They would ask me, Raymond, well, if you ask somebody, you think Raymond was good in the Air Force? Yes, he was good. Ask him, do you think sergeant was the justifiable place where he found him in the Air Force? And they would probably say no. He could have been much better. He could have gone much higher. He could have done so much more. But I wasn't bad. I was one of the, well, let's say the good guys in the Air Force. I was committed. I loved it. I just loved it. Even today, I think about it and I loved the environment. It was just a fantastic environment to grow in. Discipline. People hate discipline. I love discipline. I loved it. But even according to that, if you ask somebody else, do you think Raymond was on top of his class? They would say, no, of course not. He could have been much better. And therefore we have to understand, when Ramchal talks in his book about devotion, you get to a period in your life, now they did this a lot in the Air Force, but I'm not so sure if they do it in they did it in the private sector, where you've got a self-evaluation. So it's time for increases. So they give you a form and say to you, okay, you need to have a pay increase. There's a self-evaluation form. You tell me what you think about yourself and how much increase you deserve. Now, I don't know how many of you have done self-appraisals. It's really difficult, because it's a fine line between ego and sometimes of a low self-esteem. So obviously you would think to yourself, well, this, and you would put yourself in number 5s in so many places, and then the corporal would, or the sergeant or the captain would be in front of you, and he would say, well, I'm happy to know that you think that you are so good. But I want to tell you, and then he'll give you some examples, and it'll show you certain things. And this is where the Ruach comes in our lives. And he speaks things in our lives. Now we will get downcast very quickly. Why? Because these things are being spoken in our lives. But this is the way of God, together with me, doing a self-appraisal. To show you at your level, you can be better. But you see, the problem that we have is we measure ourselves against the person next to you. What God is doing in his life, and why God is doing this, and his decision there and this. In actual fact, there's two separate lines. His manner of performance, his intent, his devotion, you've got nothing to do with that. There's a certain level of devotion that you have to at least maintain. You have to get into the army. You have to serve God. There are certain things that's non-negotiable. You have to do. You have to keep Shabbat. You have to keep Shabbat. Non-negotiable. Okay, but now different peoples keep Shabbat differently because they are in different stages in their life. And we can't as believers now say, yeah, you know, he doesn't know. So we are all on a path according to Ramchal, that even if I look at this book and I'm saying, God, I really need to be at that level. I'm not there. God says, well, welcome to your self-appraisal. I want to show you that even where you think you are, you can be better. You can be more devoted. And everything, the intent, the manner of our intentions, the deeds, everything is about the self. Because we cannot serve God anywhere else except what you see here. The body, the spirit, the soul. And 2 Chronicles 7:14 tells us, and my people upon whom my name is called. So it's actually calling to the believers. Not to non-believers, it's calling to Israelites. So it's calling upon us, saying, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face, and turn from their evil ways, then I shall hear from the heavens and forgive their sin and heal their land. It doesn't call upon the sinners within their people. He cuts through, because each one has got their different levels, but on your level you are not clear of sin. We have to realize that we are all sinners, that we need salvation. If you're sitting here and you're saying, I'm okay, I do not need salvation, I do not need the atonement of sin, then you are at the wrong place in your life, and you have to. So prayer, and this is what we have been doing today, is in prayer seeking the face of God, because there is no WhatsApp group that I know of, or an email address, or God. You get God to know through two ways: prayer and the Torah. The Torah through prayer, and in prayer in the Torah. And we can only do this on the body level: sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. If we want to serve God, we need to serve Him with His hands. We need to serve Him with His mouth. We need to serve Him by guarding what we hear, what we see. We have to work on what we input into the ears and to the eyes. This is our place of where the deeds take place. And this is where we have to be devoted. Our body needs to be devoted to God. It needs to be devoted, and we have to devote our bodies to God. And saying, well, it's not my own. It belongs to God in any case. But the body is not the one that's the issue. It's the one that's controlling the body. You know, you've got the good inclination, you've got the evil inclination. You've got those two little inclinations, and you're fighting all the time. The one that's the strongest, he's the one that controls the body. Your spirit is strong, then you want to do spiritual things. It says, you think of worldly things, you will become worldly. If you think about heavenly things, you will pursue the things of heaven. So everything that we imagine, everything that we think, everything that we reason, even our affections, it affects the body. So if we are, and I would almost want to say this is where the manner of our actions takes place, in our emotions. You know, I feel off today, so I'm not going to pray with such a zeal today. You know, I'm fasting today, so I can't really pray the normal. In actual fact, when you feel the lowest, that's when you have to pray even with more zeal, to show that in your body, in your intent, the manner of the deed is not managed, or it's not even controlled by any of what we know, what we have reasoned, what we have remembered. But the intent of everything is in the world. It's their spirit, the intuition, the communion, the conscience. And this is where he says that this is the new covenant, that I am going to make you all millionaires. Because this is why people are serving God. Because they want to be prosperous, they want to have a good life, they don't want to be sick, they want to have all these things. But some of these things, as in an army, running up and down without water, suffering, sleeping at night, being cold, was part of my preparation. And if I didn't go through that period, I would not be prepared fully for a war. At that stage we were at war. So, but we wouldn't prepare. Now, that's why in the beginning I said, it's not really about even a wrestling. I used that slide out of a previous presentation or teaching because I was talking about Israel, the wrestling of Jacob becoming Israel. But we have to understand we're far beyond wrestling. We are in a war. We have to fight for our survival. And therefore, He will give us His Spirit, His Ruach within our hearts, and He will write what in our hearts? All the blessings and the curses. Amen. Is that what Jeremiah is saying? What is He going to write in our hearts? The commandments. He's not even saying New Testament scripture. He's saying commandments. And He shall cause you to walk in it. So for me, it's a problem because there are mindsets out there that saying, this is the new covenant. We are free from the law. But that's the opposite what the scripture is saying. I will write these laws upon your heart and shall cause you to walk in it. But the result of that, now look at this, the result of the intent and of the manner of the performance is going to cause a deed so great. He says, and you shall not teach each one, know God, but you shall know God. You see, we still need to teach people to know God. But God says, if this new covenant is within you, you just walk in it. People won't need to know God because they will be taught by the things that you do. And that's why it is so important today that we be purified and be cleansed on 3 levels. On our deeds, on the manner of our performance, and also in our intent. In our spirit, in our soul, and in our body. And the one that gets the most food will become the strongest. So this is my Yom Kippur Day of Atonement message. On Yom Kippur, may all your prayers be heard. May the Lord bless you with all that is good. Amen. So the final service of Yom Kippur now, we are not going to stay here the whole day. So typically somewhere tonight before the ending of Yom Kippur, there will be the sounding of the shofar. So the final service of Yom Kippur is the Neilah service. Neilah literally means the closing, and refers to the symbolic closing of the gates of heaven, and hence God's willingness to hear the prayers of the people. There is a time that they call upon you, and you have to parade, and your shoes has to be shined. And you don't know, sometimes every morning the parade was at 7, but they made sure it was never at 7. And you would hear the sound of the trumpets. We had a bugle, something blowing, or a siren. It would be 5 to 7, 10 to 7, 5 past 7, sometimes 7:15. Sometimes people would leave the grounds and go back to their places about 7:30. When you just settled in your bungalow 7:30, wow, we skipped parade today, thank God. We just get relaxed, and then the trumpet sound, siren. Then we have to hurry through the parade ground, through the dust, and when you're standing there, your shoes are dirty. They're doing it it was by intent that they did it, so that we don't get used to by a certain day. And therefore, the closing of the gates we have to see is exactly the same. It can be 10 to midnight. It can be 1:45 midnight. It could be on midnight. It could be 5 past midnight, 2 past midnight. Or sometimes we think, this is already 1 o'clock in the morning and nothing has happened. You see, the Bible is worth nothing. And when you've just said that, the trumpet is going to sound. Then you have just given up at the last moment. You cannot give up. Even if it's 2 or 3, even if the dawn is starting to break. Dawn is starting to break and you think, it's so long time after midnight. You could just give up there. And then God will sound the trumpet and He will say, it's time for the setup of the kingdom. There is therefore a spiritual urgency, motivation, prayer at the service. As the sun is going to set, and most people are lightheaded and exhausted from this long day of fasting and prayer, that we are going to sound the shofar. Now we are going to sound it now as a conclusion of this service. But we are going to sound the 4 sounds of the shofar. The tekiah, which is to announce the coming of the King. We are all waiting for the Mashiach to set up His kingdom, to reign as King, to establish a kingdom of peace on this earth. But there's also the shefarim, which is the broken cry, the moaning and the crying sound which we should be sounding today, signifying that we are broken and we actually are calling upon God and saying, God, it feels to us it's past midnight. Where are you? Where is your kingdom? We are longing. Our heart is for God to establish His kingdom. And the uttering of the short piercing cries of plea of mercy. God, while I'm here, I'm sinning. The longer I'm here, I'm sinning. I need to be atoned. You are my salvation. And then the tekiah kedola, which is the sound of 2 different sounds, is to call upon Adonai, and was sounded at Mount Sinai before God's descent. That was ultimately the sound of, when you hear that sound, you know God is here. His kingdom is here. The sound is going to happen. And therefore, we are going to bless. Let us stand. Rochelle, you can switch off the... So we are going to sound the shofar. We are